Hello, it's really lovely to see you here today. Here I am cutting out another shape from that same light green piece of cloth that I used for my water lilies. I'm cutting out a vaguely oval shape for the body of a frog, and then I'm going to use stitch, much like I did for the flamingo, to create the frog's limbs. I'm making the frog look like it's leaping out of the water, so it's sitting much higher up on my cloth than those water lilies that I wanted to give the appearance that they're actually sitting on the water, the frog's leaping up. And I'm starting out by just doing some overcast stitches to secure the little piece of cloth to the background, and then I'm going in and using chain stitch just like I did with the flamingo to add the frog's legs. So I'm making the leg bent at the elbow, and then because I was thinking about how I was going to do this as I was drawing my picture, I decided the fingers and toes, I'm going to make them with two fly stitches kind of overlapping each other so that it looks like the frog has four little fingers there. I don't actually know how many fingers frogs have, but I thought four was a good number. So I am now going back to the body of the frog and continuing around, securing the body onto the background, but also moving my thread around to where I'm going to stitch down the next limb. And it's just the way that I like to work. It's kind of I like to work in kind of an efficient way. I could have, if I wanted to, just sewed the body down all the way around and then gone in and added the limbs by jumping around. But in my mind, it I just like to do it this way. So if it's easier for you and it makes more sense for you because you're not the same as me, to sew the little bit down first and then add the limbs separately, absolutely do that. So again, same thing. The upper arms are reaching up into the sky and bent at the elbows. And this one also will have fly stitch fingers or toes. I don't know if there arms or legs on the frog. And about this time, I started to think, I'm not sure if this is a good color. I'm thinking that maybe this light green cloth is not the best choice to show up against the background. And maybe I should have gone with the darker green cloth, like some of my lily pad. I definitely do like the way that the lily pads look, and I really, really like those little lines on that blue cloth there that look like more water aquatic plants. I really love the way those look. But but I'm thinking again, just like I when I was working on the whales, I didn't think that they were standing out the way that I wanted them to. And this can be tricky if you've got a darker part off your background and then a lighter area to choose a color that sits on the top that shows up against both of those colors. Usually you would either go lighter or darker than your background, but if you've got a light and a dark background, that can be tricky. So I'm still finishing this off. I'm going to use up this thread, and then I'm going to think about what I could do differently. And I've got enough thread left here for one more leg, one of the bottom legs. Now I'm going to think about what I want to do that'll maybe help the my little frog there to show up a little bit better. So what I decided to do was to switch to a darker color thread, which will show up well against this light color background. And I started again near that first limb, and then I'm going to go around the limb and just do a whip stitch, which then just it doesn't go through the cloth, it just goes through the stitches and wraps around them and makes that limb a little bit more bulky, and it also makes it a little darker. And I'm also going to do small straight stitches around beside each of the fingers or toes there as well. I could have done fly stitches here, but I just decided to go with just a few straight stitches there. And I moved the thread back down to the body, and I'm going around again. Maybe if I had decided to do a blanket stitch, that would have outlined my frog rather well, but I I think I was feeling a little frustrated by this point and was not thinking that clearly. So I just ended up just going around, whipping that arm as well, and keep going around towards the third limb there. And eventually I will add a fourth limb. I have not completely forgotten about that fourth limb, but sort of thinking about how I can make these limbs a little bit more obvious. And I'm noticing that those dark stitches around the outside edge there look a little blobby. So I might think I might do something about that. So let's see what happens here. I'm whipping around the stitches of that lower leg there too. I still haven't added any toes to that one, but depending on your thread situation, it would be more organized to add the toes at the same time as the legs. But I'm going all the way around the body, so now I've got my body secured there, and now I'm going to rethink this. So I've decided, because this last limb is going into a darker area, that I'm thinking that maybe the light thread would be okay for this limb. So I've gone back to the light green thread to put that last leg in. And yeah, it seems to be showing up okay on the dark water background there. And that's the thing. So typically, if you want something to show up, if it's either lighter or darker than the background, it will show up. If it's the same tone, the same degree of darkness and lightness, will make it harder to see. So because in this area, this thread is quite a bit lighter than the background, it'll show up. And I can also use it to do the toes for the other frog now, because those toes are going to be over the darker background as well. So it's just near the sky, which is much lighter, where I had to work with a darker thread for things to show up. So there are the toes for that leg as well, so I didn't forget them. But then I thought that that solid piece of cloth that I used for the frog's body just looked a little plain there. The light colored thread, because I don't necessarily want these to be really noticeable, I just want them to add a little bit of texture. I did some vaguely vertical lines. They're not exactly parallel. They added a little bit of texture. And I think that looks okay, but I don't really like the way those stitches around the outside edge of the frog's body look. Adding more stitches is making that look a little bit less speckled. It looks a little bit more like a dark line around the body, which personally I like better than the splotchy look that it had before. But if you had chosen colors that were a good contrast to begin with, you probably wouldn't need to do quite as much fiddling. But this is just showing you that even if things don't look the way you wanted them to in the beginning, you can keep working on it to modify the way things looks. And now what I'm doing with this dark green, I'm creating the eyes using fly stitches at the top there. And it's a small detail and it's probably not necessary, but I kind of like that it was there. And I had enough thread to make it happen. So on either side of the top of the frog's head there, two fly stitches, a fly stitch on either side off the head there to give the illusion of eyes. And this is definitely not a realistic frog. And to tell you the truth, I wasn't totally happy with it at the end, but I did make another frog basically in the same way, starting out with a darker piece of cloth, and it ended up looking pretty much like the first one. So that was another thing that didn't end up on video somehow. So there's the first one. It looks better than I thought it looked. Once again, thanks for watching, and I will see you again soon. Happy stitching. Bye for now.